Today is May 21st, 2024. Welcome to Native Calgarian Podcast. Oki, Nagana go, Mekoche Chistakom Aki, or Dekots Nagotine Siku. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she, her, they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11. My people wore rabbit skin, so it's been referred to the land as the Hair People. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is uninvited to this area of Clincho Tine Indhe in Satu Dene, meaning Many Big Dog Town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary, or in Blackfoot, Mulkistis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I am a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution while having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government. It's a way to divide Indigenous people's inherent rights. Indigenous Two Spirit or the Indigenous 2S LGBTQ community and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. According to the 2023 Quality of Life Report by the Calgary Foundation, 31% of racialized Calgarians cannot find suitable employment. I am not a social worker, nor am I an elder, or do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous people, but I can share my journey as a Dene mother navigating this colonial, misogynistic, racist world in 2024. As a trauma-informed Dene woman who has attempted to run, joined harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at expensive conventions, left my home to travel to those conventions just to vote on incomplete policies that still allow for incarceration, a denial of justice, a denial of health services, racism, colonial trauma, and genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples. I have work to continue, reports to advocate for, and attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I think of all of this today, and I hope we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see your role in reconciliation and as a treaty partner. Pride Month should never just be 1 month, as it is important to understand that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is forced on this land by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space as well for Indigenous people, as well as honoring the hosts as a guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in a so called time of reconciliation. Can they be performative? Of course. It's important that they have that meaning. I encourage everyone to introduce themselves with an acknowledgement of their ancestors, stories of displacement, how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement. So we as Indigenous people know how safe you are to be around. If you won't pronounce your local Indigenous names, won't say your pronouns, your story of origin, acknowledge stolen lands, acknowledge imposed economic oppression, or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my family, my community, and myself because we face the most colonial violence based on ignorance or worse, willful anti Indigenous biases. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties, and lies taught today in schools nationally. And that's why settlers and those who call themselves Native Calgarians or whatever town you're from, you show me you have no Indigenous 101 understanding. Just see Winty has a book. It's called Unreconciled. It explains this so perfectly, as do many other Indigenous authored books. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change, but it would also be a part of acknowledging treaty partnership, meaningful reconciliation, and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I'm speaking to you on the lands of the Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the opposed US-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, which is the Omska Bibigani, and north of the border are the Siksika, Gainai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Goodstoney, formerly Wesley, the Chiniki, Bears Paw Nations of the Stoney, or how they prefer that they call themselves is Yiharhi Nakota. and the Dene from Sutina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you could pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, I thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps, whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest casts and pin posts on social media. And I will say our YouTube channel is where you get to see my two guests that are on the show today. And I would like to invite Zachary. Would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Yeah. Hello. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for having us on the podcast. And thank you for that introduction. Very wonderful. My name is Zachary Flett. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I come from Saugeen Anishinaabe First Nation. My spirit name is Kanatawa Tung, and that means to be a leader and to protect people.
Mm.
Um, I'm here with my good friend Darian and business partner, and we're here to share some tips on digital literacy and how to keep elders and everyone safe online from scams and everything else.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that you're here. Darian, would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Hi, thank you so much. Zach, you did such an amazing job. I don't even need to introduce myself, but basically, my name is Darian Ducharme. My family's from Lac Seul in Ontario. I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I have about a 10-year uh, experience in technology and helping people. And throughout that corporate world in the tech industry, it kind of led to what Teqare is in the ability to help people and the desire to make everyone safe online all across Canada. It's basically.
Mm. Oh, I'm so glad that you do that. So I seen on Facebook the other day, I seen this meme making fun of elders for always getting hacked, and it's not wrong. So, for my point of view, I was like, well, it's not wrong, and I wish it was. Like, I do wish that people understood that. We know, and so I was telling you folks offline that my granny had passed away, and I still have my mom who's like sometimes going on, and so it looks like my granny was just online, and it's like, no, my granny was not just online. And so it's kind of embarrassing from my point of view, because I'm like, I got to teach her, but at the same time, she's not ready for that. She's not ready for this conversation. So I was laughing, and then I seen a sponsored ad from you folks. One of you were on there saying, hey, digital literacy. And I'm like, I could scream the amount of times in a day I have to repeat myself with folks not understanding simple digital literacy, but then also, the game that you have to play on social media, that if you don't like, you don't comment, you don't share, then, it's like that you're not helping. This is the like digital literacy 101. So from my point of view, I was like, thank God there's somebody I can point to. So I would love to get a little more into that. Like, what got you started doing this, really?
That's a great question. How about I'll even start. Teqare was started in around 2021. Like I said, I was over 10 years in the cell phone industry, so it's kind of like the corporate world in technology. So I was managing cell phone stores, and I really loved it. But what I recognized was a huge issue, and it started arising maybe I would say since 2016, when I would see elders come up to our cell phone booth with gift cards trying to pay off CRA and romance scams. And it was something that was close to my heart because I care about people. And I always thought it could be my grandmother that is scammed next. So
Yeah.
whenever they came to the kiosk, I would make sure that we would spend the time to help them understand and educate them, right? Because no one's really educating them. And then when elders would get cell phones from us, we couldn't afford the time to give them as long as they needed, or the time that they needed. And a lot of them actually needed like one-on-one help in the home. And as a cell phone store, we weren't able to give that. Like we could maybe give 4 hours of time, but you understand the corporate world, there's targets and there's certain things that we can't do, even though you want to do to help. So I started Teqare at that time to kind of bridge that gap to help these elderly, or anyone for that matter, who needs help with cell phones, and to help them with that technology in one-on-one in any kind of area that they need, in a personalized service for people that actually care. Because I knew out there at the time there was like Geek Squad, but no one really wanted to help them. So we started in Winnipeg, and it was an amazing niche to help people, especially through a COVID at that time. But now recently, we transitioned to something much more needed and more aligned with our vision in that sense, where instead of helping people one-on-one in their home, we can help a lot more people with currently what we're doing. And I'll get Zach to kind of explain the vision behind the scam prevention.
Yeah, thanks, Darian. So with the scam prevention, it was kind of always a thing that was worrisome for us. We all have, grandparents and older folks in our families. Um, I actually came home one day, because I'm staying currently with my grandma. Came home one day and she was actually in the process of being scammed over the phone. Yeah, it was one of those CRA scams saying, "Hey, you need to pay us, or you're going to be in big trouble." And obviously, my grandma's always paying things off right on time. She's always paying her tax bills on time. So for her to hear that really scared her. But um, I overheard the talk of gift cards, right? We need you to go and get some gift cards. And I'm like, "Hey, grandma, this is a scam. You need to hang up the phone." And we kind of, me and Darian have been talking for a while about this, and I'm like, man, people are getting scammed so often. We both shared our concerns for both our parents, grandparents, and stuff like that. We kind of came up with the idea together to, hey, why don't we put our experience in the tech industry into helping elders and helping older folks with preventative scam workshops. So that's kind of how the vision started for that. And we're trying to go Canada wide to ensure that everybody on and off reserve, elders, are protected and essentially safe. So that's kind of the vision with the scam prevention workshops. I think Darian mentioned perfectly about how Teqare was started and how he said it was there to bridge the gap,
Yeah.
essentially.
Oh, this is wonderful news. I know that there's a few elder circle that immediately I'm going to be sharing this podcast with them, your resources, because we know it's happening to our people. And there's there's a lot to unpack with that. Before I do,
Yeah.
I'll let you both talk. Yeah.
I'll mention one thing about helping. Like, Teqare's vision isn't just Indigenous people. We want all Canadians to have access to this information, but one thing that is near and dear to our hearts is our own grandmothers and our background. And we understand that Indigenous people from the communities that we're from face even more hardships as far as isolation, right? And a lot of systemic issues, rather than people who might live in the city. So that's why we want to start off all of our energy and capacity into helping the most vulnerable and the most isolated. We could go into stories that we've heard from chief and council of unique issues that they're facing, right, in isolation, and it breaks our hearts. And that's why we really want to be there when no one else is there.
Yeah.
And as we grow, and we want to be that household name all across Canada that everyone knows and trusts that they can come to for resources, scam prevention, and have that we're going to be that company that's there for them.
Right on. This makes my heart so happy because like even my white father and my family that's on that side of on my side of the family, like they're of that generation that they don't do a lot when it comes to this stuff, and um may click on the wrong thing, have a virus, and then need my youngest brother to come over and try to fix it, and he has a new kid, so it's like a lot, right? And I just wish that there was a place that they could go and not be like, hey, for $100 a month, we can maintain your, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't know if this is necessary for my dad who likes to watch Fox News for 20 minutes a day. Like, I don't know if we need that. So. Yeah, so from I guess from my point of view, I'm grateful that you're doing that work. And what kind of feedback are you getting from the community?
I'll start off and then I'll let Zach take it. It's
Sure.
been absolutely incredible. Like it's been insane to the point where we knew how we were going to be received on certain communities, like, as essentially grandkids, because we do care and we communicate that we care and we show that we care, so we're received well. But they're like hugging us and chasing us after the sessions, asking us questions and like joking with us, and like we really feel that they've brought us into their own family, right? And that's just my personal experience from some of the off reserve and on reserve or on community sessions that we've done. I'll let Zach share his heart for that because it's amazing.
Yeah, we've presented to a number of reserves and elders so far. It's been super, super amazing, like Darian was saying. Having people come up to us after, share their stories, you know, allowing them, to be essentially honest with us and kind of vulnerable about how they feel about these things, which is super important. And there was actually a lady who came up to us after and was like, "Hey, I've never had a landline. I've never had any social media or internet or anything, but she said, with the tips and tricks that I learned today, I feel like I want to start doing that. I want to connect with my family that I haven't seen." So
Mm.
she's like, "I'm gonna get a landline and I'm gonna get internet, and I'm gonna be safe with tips and tricks." We give them a little handout that they can, stick on their fridge or keep by their phone after every session that we do. And we're going to be continuing to do classes for that reserve. So she's confident that after the classes that we do for her, she's going to come, she said, and after the classes she does, she feels confident that she can connect with those people online.
Oh,
Mhm.
that
See,
is
that's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I listen to the CBC radio all the time, and like it's a real problem across Canada, scamming right now. And so of course that makes it worse for folks who are thinking about, okay, I need an iPad, but I don't, just so that I can send pictures or see pictures of my grandkids. And they're too afraid of even that because
Yeah.
of this. So hearing a story like that is so like heartwarming. My God. And I know for me, I'm going to be promoting your stuff like all the time to everyone I know because we need this. And I mean, I don't do much for I don't do what you both do, but I still have to do so much digital literacy every single day with simple
Yeah.
little things on social apps that not like for whatever reason people are not understanding and getting. So I just kind of let it be. Yeah.
I there's no shame in knowing that like technology is advancing so quick and we know
Yes.
it's not slowing down anytime soon. And with that comes scammers who find new ways to try to trick people. And Zach and I have a dedicated group chat that we share scams that are like updated, and so we really have to stay current and in market all the time because things are changing, right? So even for us, there's sometimes that I look at this scam and I'm like, Zach, I need a second set of eyes on this, right? And I kind of we need to work together on some of these things because it is getting really good. And it is a little scary of where it can go,
Yeah.
but that's why we want to do our best to be there and communicate effectively so elders and people can understand and bring down that anxiety so they know that they can be safe online, right?
Yeah.
We get asked all the time about AI. We understand AI is advancing, and technology can be an amazing thing because it can bring connection to a lot of people and bring down loneliness and help in a lot of capacities that we need as people. But also that scary aspect, we're trying to take care of that so we can give the people the tools and the knowledge to be powerful and know what to look out for so they can feel safe and they don't have anxiety when they use technology.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a really great point. I read something about Scarlett Johansson, I think her name is, talking about AI and them misusing her voice. And I've heard of other scams where people will take like the president of the United States and make a statement that's not true. And so I worry about that, especially with now upcoming elections. That's kind of my world. I wish I wasn't in politics, but I am. And so I think about that a lot, and I think about how people are misusing that. And I also think of the romance scams that are really prevalent. Yeah, you guys probably know a lot about that too. Yeah.
It's I'll share this. Like for our intro workshop, we have about 6 scams that we go into that we know are the 6 most common that are affecting the age range of the class we're doing. And one of the main one is romance scams and grandparent scams. And I never used to laugh about it until whenever we do our first slide where it says romance scams, we often have many giggles and cackles and laughs in the room because unfortunately they all know that they maybe haven't been scammed out of money, but they've had those messages, like, hey baby, I love you. Can you send me X amount of money? I want to come and see you. Sorry, it's not always a laughing matter. Obviously not, because we're dealing with people, but in our classes, that's one, whenever we bring up this slide, they're always laughing. It's one that people are being faced with.
Yep. Yeah, it's really problematic. I worry a lot about that one because how like people are lonely as well, right? So that's not right. It's not okay. I worry every single day about that one when it comes to family members because that's when people are lonely. I don't know. I get some really weird messages. I get texts, I get private messages from all the different social medias. I think whatever bot account stuff that does those romance ones have figured out that being a US military or a police officer from the States is not something I'm interested in. I don't know how many more of those I have to block on a daily.
They haven't learned yet.
No, and I'm like how many times, but I heard on the CBC like a bunch of folks that were like really taken in by like a woman scam artist in the Philippines or something, and then other people who like they'll use my identity and they'll pretend like they're and they'll use that to scam somebody, and then the person will contact that person and be like, hey, like you scammed me over here, and they were like, I don't know you and I don't have that account, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much wildness out there, and that's why I do try to thank my listeners and the ones who follow me. And I had my first Instagram account hacked, and because I didn't pay the money to be verified, Instagram was not helpful in any capacity. So then I got a bunch of scam artists that were like, oh, you can go here and we'll get your Instagram account back. And I'm like, oh my God, a scammer scamming a scammer.
And they might even look like Instagram verified like support.
Yeah, no, it was wild going through that. And how do I teach my mom that, right? Like she barely Oh my
Well,
gosh.
I'll
So
give two tips, or I'll give tips if that's okay on grandparent scam quick, and then Zach can give a quick tip on maybe romance scam, what to look out for, if that's kind of where you want to go with this.
sure.
We want to give a lot of value. So the other big one is grandparent scam, and the grandparent scam is actually even being shared by police all over Canada. Well, because that's the one kind of outlet that we had before Teqare, to try to help people, but not a
Yeah.
lot of people trust that outlet, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, for the grandparent scam, the hackers will go on your Facebook. They'll look online and they'll find out the names of your grandchildren and your children, and then oftentimes through those names they can do a little bit more research to find out maybe where they work, things that they like, right? Because in this digital age, a lot of the information can be found online. So the danger with the grandparent scam is these scammers will find that personal information. They might even impose that voice through software, right? And then they'll call the grandparent in place of the grandchild or the child and say, oh, this is the police, this grandchild's been arrested, or there's been an accident, and or they might even say this is the lawyer and they need $10,000 today or else so they can get out, right? So they'll pull on the heartstrings of each individual to try to get that money out of them. And unfortunately, this is a big one that people are falling to, because as a grandparent, they will do anything almost for their children or their grandchildren. So a lot of times they'll end up paying the money, and then they won't realize until after that they were scammed.
Yeah.
So biggest thing to look out for, and the biggest tip for your viewers and everyone that we share this with, is to have a family safe word for your family. So that safe word could be whatever. It could be Vista or apples. But what that means is if a grandparent is talking to that lawyer, they could say, hey, what is our family safe word? And if they don't know what that family safe word is, you know that it's probably a scam, or you could ask more clarifying questions before you send the money.
Jeez. Holy. Those are some great tips. I really appreciate that. Zachary, do you have anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, while Darian was talking, I was just pulling up our slide deck here. It's kind of hard to see, but we got a little section there for romance scams.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna read over that page, just to kind of give a little insight about what we share about romance scams. So the slide says, looking for love online, be careful. Scammers create fake profiles on dating sites to try to build a relationship with you. Once they've gained your trust, they ask for money or personal information. So some red flags to look out for. Their profile picture seems too good to be true. They say they're far away, so usually they're overseas. Hey, I can't make it to you. I need you to send money so I can come see you. The relationship moves very, very quickly. So you start talking to them, and then they're like, "Oh my God, I'm in love with you," stuff like that. And then whenever you do,
Well,
maybe
obviously. Just kidding.
um, they break promises to see you. So, some people a lot of the time, they have sent money, and like, hey, here, I'm gonna buy you your plane ticket. Here's like money for the plane ticket. But then they break those promises, like to come see you for whatever reason, right? Hey, I'm in the hospital. I need to get a kidney transplant, emergency kidney transplant or something.
Yeah.
There's been so many crazy, weird, and uh unbelievable
Outlandish.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I one of my favorite ones that I had gotten, and I just was playing with him. Apparently he was a US neurosurgeon who had time on the side to be able to contact Michelle Robinson up in Canada. And I just was kind of watching what he would have to say. It was shocking to me because I know that's what people are falling for. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy because like you said, people are lonely, right? People are lonely and they're looking for love, and there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
I met my girlfriend through online dating. And there's tips and tricks to look out for, right?
Yeah.
So, looking for love online is super important. That's how my parents met. My parents met when the internet just became a thing, right? So, it's super important. And it's important to know the tips and tricks, what to look out for.
Yep.
So to all the viewers watching or listening, um, kind of like the red flags that I went over. If the relationship is moving too quickly, their profile picture seems too good to be true, and they always break promises to see you, just proceed with caution, right? And there's no shame in asking uh, to identify the person by asking for a video call or additional photos, right? Because if they take the photos of somebody, chances are they only have a set amount of photos that they can use. So nothing wrong with asking them, hey, send me like a photo with you doing a thumbs up, or writing on a piece of paper, because it's kind of come to that now, right? Where people are looking for love online and they can't trust other people, right? So it's always good to be safe.
Yeah.
Wow, this is great work you're both doing. I'm so honored to have you both on my podcast to discuss this with me. Now, you said it's like Teqare, but when I look at it, it's Teqare. What is the meaning of that name?
That's a great question. I get asked this all the time. We were just in Quebec at a NACA event, and I got
What's
asked
a
this.
NACA event?
Oh, do you know NACA, NACCA? It's a organization. It's basically it's an indigenous umbrella organization that helps small businesses and entrepreneurs essentially. Yeah. It's an amazing event of meeting other business people who can help us, as far as mentorship, because we recognize that us being maybe what our full capacity is we can't do it by ourselves. We need help of other uncles who maybe have done it before us, who, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So we go to
Yep.
these events and meet the right people to help us. But the name for Teqare. So originally it was supposed to be TECH-care. So it's communicating that it's tech and that we care. But in Canada, to do the corporation, that name was already taken. And it kind of sucks. I already started making the logo. We already started making the logo with Teqare. And then I was sitting around with some really close friends, and we were just kind of having like a brainstorming session of kind of what the name should be. And these incredible people at this organization that helps us with some things. Her name was Carly. She came up with the name. She's like, what about Teqare spelled this way in a unique way? And then it hit me that I'm like it's almost like a spiritual thing where I'm like, that's the name. I'm like, that's the name. We're taking that name. And yes, we get mispronounced once in a while. We get asked what it means all the time. And I'm sorry, it doesn't mean anything amazing. But to me, it's the name of the company that people are going to love and trust
Yeah.
for
No,
Canada.
I love it. I'm like that's a good workaround because
Yeah.
and for me, like, when people say they're native Calgarian and you say that to a status native, and it's like the biggest eye roll intergenerationally of my ancestors, like and so for me it was naming it was to try to take back this ridiculous terminology. But for me, or watching your company, I'm like, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what people should be thinking of. So I'm obviously going to link that information into our preamble when we send out our podcast. And we hope people sign up for your emails and follow you on all the socials.
Yeah. So for email, we don't have like any kind of email sign up yet. I think we're gonna be working on that where we can do like monthly tech tips. We just haven't got to that level yet. But for us, how we help is we work with all people to come in and provide these training workshops depending on their unique community of what their needs are. right? For example, at the end of this month, we're going to do a Women's in Healing event in Winnipeg at the RBC Convention Center. And our whole hour-long presentation is going into how directly for how women can stay safe online. So we go into catfish, we go into sugar baby stuff, and to just help empower, right? So we don't only just do elders, that's our main passion and our goal, because they need the most help. But people ask us to do different sessions, and we can create the content uniquely for that specific event.
Time out. So one of like let me find my words. At a grassroots level, I'm a bit of an activist out here for the topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit. And so when I talk about both the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and the National Inquiry, both actually have like calls to action, calls to justice for media and social media and business. And like you just, bam, you just said that just now in like that short period. And I've tried to express this a billion times on all of the different platforms I do. And I just don't know what it is that people cannot do and get about this. And you're doing it. You're just doing it. And so you like from my point of view, I'm like, compliant. Finally, you're compliant. And I can't seem to get that across to other people. So I just from me, like when you talked about the name and how it hit you in the spiritual, it's like you just like this is what we need. This is what as Indigenous people we've needed, and obviously because our most vulnerable need this information as well. And here you are, a business actually doing it. So I'm so grateful to hear you say that. And I wish other companies would take your lead and understand the gravity of that. So thank you.
Oh, it's such an honor and a privilege. Zach and I wake up every day in our group chat almost, and we say, we feel so blessed to be able to do what we do, because it's so fulfilling and it hits the nail on the head. Every session we do, we hear these stories. Like, for example, I'll share one more very quick one, if that's okay.
Please.
We spoke at an AMC event in front of multiple chiefs of the Southern Chiefs Council about 3 weeks ago, and Kathy Merrick was there. And at the end, we're just walking around talking to people, getting feedback. And one of the chiefs, I forgot what specific community he's from, but he told Zach and I, he said, my mother, I think this was about 10 years ago, got scammed by a romance scam, lost her whole pension. And now she went to try to retire. Now she can't retire, and she's still working at 78 years old. And that broke my heart, because a few ways, like if she had the education that we're sharing, she wouldn't be in that scenario, right? And that's what gets us up every day and push us to get in front of more people, because it's preventative. If they have this information, these terrible stories are going to be become a thing of the past.
Yeah, God, I hope so. Oh my God, that is so powerful. And yeah, my heart goes out to her. Holy Hannah. I've really appreciated your time today that both of you have taken to talk to me about what you're doing. And like it obviously is a passion as well as a business. And I just thank you both. And I just wanted to give you both an opportunity. Was there anything else you'd like to add today?
Maybe if Zach has something, I think I'm good. If you had any questions, you can ask us more questions, but this has been fantastic. I thank you for
Good.
everything.
Oh, vice versa. Zach, do you have anything you'd like to add today?
Well, I just wanted to say, Michelle, thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast today, and to share some of what we do to all your followers. So I really appreciate that. I apologize for kind of fidgeting around. I do have ADHD a little bit, so I kind of fidget and stuff when I'm sitting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't really know if I have anything else to add. I think Darian kind of summed everything up perfectly. You know, scams are obviously a growing concern, so and they're getting very clever.
Yeah.
So we're doing our best to try to roll out and keep our material updated as much as possible with all the scams that we see, so that all the older folks, grandparents, elders, on and off reserve, indigenous, non-indigenous, make sure that everyone gets the resources needed. But like Darian mentioned, we're both indigenous. Both of our grandparents, are full status. So that's very near and dear to our hearts, is making sure that our communities, our grandparents are safe, making sure that somebody not always somebody's not always there for them. Maybe they don't have any grandkids, right? So we want to be there for them. That's where Teqare comes in, and that's where do um we do the work to make sure that they're safe and protected. But yeah, thank you again, Michelle. You're a very wonderful person, and I'm very, very grateful to be on the podcast with you and Darian. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm honored that you both are doing this work and sharing your passion here. So I'm obviously going to be amplifying things that I see from you both on a regular. I also welcome you back onto the podcast anytime that you have new exciting news that you want to share on this or other issues. For me, kind of back to the conversation of media in general, we don't really have like real news where it's not filtered by an editor, somebody somewhere, and you really only get 2 or 3 speaking lines each. And so to me, it like Indigenous representation and what we're doing, I mean, in a lot of ways, this could have been any Canadian, like 3 Canadians talking about these issues, but we also understand, because we're Indigenous, that there are different barriers that we face. So I just hope from my point of view, that's the power of a podcast, is that you can actually just talk about things like without a filter, and be open and honest, and not have to pull a punch because you don't want to lose your Canadian funding. We're not funded by the Canadian government here, so
I love your heart. We need more voices who can stand up and say what's right and not be afraid of backlash, because we need the help, we need the education, we need an all fronts, right? Like, people need to know about the history and what's still going on.
Exactly. The ongoing genocide. I'm not afraid to name it. And I know a lot of people are forced to. Just a quick story, because Wob Canoe is like our biggie right now in the world. And he was dancing at the powwow last weekend. So that's going around all the socials, right? So I remember when he did the Eighth Fire CBC special, and it was a series to talk about these issues. And he almost didn't air. It was a hill he was willing to die on, that he called our grandparents and our parents, and some of us still Indian residential school survivors. And CBC was like, well, we don't want to use the word survivor. And there he was like, I'm willing to die on this hill. And that was the first time it was kind of put out there. So so he was using his power in journalism, which arguably did he. Now today, of course, he's premier of Manitoba, but at that time, that was a big risk that he took to try to push the CBC on that. So, from my point of view, I think a lot about if you have to fight someone over something so like that's an incredible thing to be fighting the CBC over, for them to still not get it right. So I was really proud of him for that alone. But that bigger picture is that we just need regular media, and yeah, you can drop an F-bomb here and there if you need to, but I think we all know our grandparents are going to be listening to this one, so we're going to try not to be doing F-bomb this, F-bomb that.
Of course.
Well, thank you folks for being on the show, and I welcome you back anytime. I'm going to give some resources. You're both welcome to chime in at any time. So thank you.
Can we can share our PDF of our take-home sheet with you, and you can use that to give to your listeners for free, and then they can print that out at home, so then they can have the same cheat sheet, essentially scam preventative sheet that they could put on their fridge or by their phone to help them out.
That'd be amazing. And we have like an Indigenous network here, and I'm going to forward it to them so they can put it out there. And we have like an Indigenous wisdom circle. I'll give it to them in the hopes it kind of gets out there, because I want that for everybody. And I'm in the Greater Forest Lawn area. We have a 55 plus organization here too. I'll forward it to them because this has to get out there. And I know the libraries are trying to do some of that work, but it's back to what you were talking about earlier, especially in the rural communities, in the reserves, some of the settlements here in Alberta, like we're not having elaborate infrastructure of, education through libraries because there's not that infrastructure.
It's
that it's just
isolation,
not there.
location, and also a lot of people don't trust the police to come and give a presentation either. So we won't even go into that.
But that's what my other podcasts are for sure. Thank you both so much. So for my listeners, we have the Indigenous Book Club. Every month we come up with a different book that we discuss. And if you miss our book club, you can listen to it on the podcast. And the next month, because June is coming up, we're going to have a local author who's Two-Spirit talking about sex, ceremony, and more poems for folks who identify as Two-Spirit. So I do hope that you consider joining us for that. Our Reconciliation Action Group is a group of folks that are trying to do more action when it comes to reconciliation. If you are listening anywhere outside of Calgary, please have a look at your churches, your business, your educational institutions, and see what kind of committee they have, and is it Indigenous led, and are they doing actual action? Really encourage people to be doing more than just words when it comes to reconciliation. Although words are powerful, and that's why I have a podcast. I'm really proud that this podcast has also given solutions on cultural safety training or cultural first aid, and all of them to start creating safer spaces for Indigenous, people of color, those with disabilities, and 2S LGBTQ to speak. According to the 2023 Quality of Life Report from the Calgary Foundation, 88% of racialized Calgarians feel uncomfortable, out of place because of their religion, ethnicity, skin color, culture, language, accent, gender, or sexual orientation, up from 75% the year before. I'm sure it'll go up yet more after this whole issue of Palestine and Israel being in the forefront, and especially the violence of last Thursday. 84% of racialized Calgarians believe that racism exists, and only 66% of non-racialized Calgarians believe that. When you see somebody being harassed, there are bystander intervention tools that you can use by the American Friends Service Committee, afsc.org. So that can help you de-escalate a situation, because we don't trust the police to be called, even more so now in Calgary. I also want to say thank you to Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of heretohelp.bc.ca for their Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. That cultural action tool is really important for reconciliation and settler understandings. I'm just lucky enough to highlight and repeat them here. Lateral violence or internalized racism is another form of violence we all experience by this oppression on these lands. So you can go to racialequitytools.org. There's tons of resource files on multiple topics of racism. And Donna Bevins has a piece of what is internalized racism. So if you are anywhere on the dynamics of oppression, just go through that, because we all are guilty of sometimes projecting or hurting others. And I mean, we're not perfect. We're not Jesus, you know how that works. So, but also if you can give a donation to Donna Bevins, that would be wonderful as well. I've also shared multiple times the anti-racism organizational lead for the city of Calgary, giving a committee presentation on the journey of becoming an anti-racism leader. So if you want to do better for racism and doing better of stopping it, why don't you watch that 1-hour YouTube video? Both activists that are a part of Black Lives Matter here locally have been legally targeted. Go to Stop the Stack YYC to learn more about what stacking charges is and how to help their legal funds, because that is really the pressing issue right now. And Indigenous people have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. City of Calgary, no more. Honor our words, honor our treaties, listen to the politicians in their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize oppression dynamics in their budget with gender equity plus, if they're cutting violence prevention from, like, Why would you cut violence prevention programming? But here we are. Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disability. Know that your vote to that person or party is going to negatively impact equity deserving people. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. There are over 400 recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, multiple reports here in Alberta alone on child welfare reform, violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Provincially, the Kenney government looked at those 231 calls to action or justice and went, how do we make them provincial? And they created 113 pathways to justice. So all your blue voters, you should be holding your blue MLAs to account on it. Follow the Premier's Council on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls work. Municipally, we have the White Goose Flying Report based off a Jack White Goose experience in residential school. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in every institution, with multiple reports that say the same thing. I hope today's helped highlight some of that to you when it comes to digital literacy. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, gendered violence, they have zero business running. It should be understood by all parties, politicians, community organizations, sports clubs, and more. Google articles on how non-Indigenous Canadians can become allies. There's some wonderful tools out there. Also, the Calgary Foundation has a ally toolkit, which is a wonderful tool for folks looking for more resources. Stephanie Harp and I had an emergency podcast hoping that our allies would do more, write more about the crises that we are facing. I encourage people to look up womenhomelessness.ca on the statement to demand the urgent action to protect the lives of Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse people experiencing homelessness. You can also download the app, aboriginalalert.ca, or go to their website for email updates. That's actually how I do it. There's also an app for the Missing Children Society of Canada. I also have signed up for their emails. And there's another app on that Missing Children Society of Canada, which I'm not very good at. So we just recently had more published data when it comes to the drug crisis that we're facing. And of course, Alberta has had our highest number yet with over 2,000 deaths in 2023. We know they're disproportionately Indigenous. A person who's doing great work is returning guest, Ewan Thompson. He has cataloged the drug crisis here in Alberta. You can also go to Moms Stopping Harm. They're a really good organization. And of course, locally, do as much as you can. If you know someone who's using substances, ask them to not use alone. If you are using alone, there is the National Overdose Response Service at 888-688-NORS for support. Or you can download the Brave Doors or Lifeguard apps as well. I have talked endlessly in my TikToks about the problems that I've faced and on Twitter with Narcan. Every Albertan has access to pick up a naloxone kit. A naloxone kit has vials and needles, and it's a really easy tutorial on how to administer them. At the very minimum, you can give them away. So if you're tired of people coming to your window and not being able to give them anything, you can always give them a naloxone kit. Any status Indigenous person in Alberta can have a box a day of Narcan spray, and those are two sprays that go up, one each nostril, that you can give to people who are experiencing houselessness so that when they see an overdose, they can help others, and it's available on the streets for folks who need it. This is going to help save lives. And at the end of the day, I talk about genocide of Indigenous peoples, and this is disproportionately affecting us. I also strongly support Freedom's Path Recovery Society.ca. They provide free one-on-one addictions counseling services, group treatment for recovery in Calgary, are queer-friendly and anti-racist. And you may have heard me fully supporting Canada's first 2S LGBTQ addiction recovery center, stonewallrecovery.ca. Wonderful people doing great work. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today and need to talk, you can call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 855-242-3310. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also go on their website, hopeforwellness.ca, and they have a little text box. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can call 844-413-6649. In Alberta, we have the 60 Scoop and the 60s Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta at ssisa.ca. ssisa.ca. So 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta, SSISA. Indian Residential School Survivor and Family Hotline. I think this is more of a BC number at 866-925-4419. Kids Help Phone 1-800-668-6868. You can also text if you're youth and you prefer 686868. And they also have a live chat from 7 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Native Youth Crisis Hotline is 877-209-1266. LGBTQ Youth Line no longer exists, but you can text at 687-694-4275, or you can go to youthline.ca, where they have lots of interactions and resources. For more non-Indigenous, you can go to distress center lines in your area, usually a functioning 211, and the new national number of 988. You can also text 988, or you can go to 988.ca for even more resources. For the 2S LGBTQ community in Toronto, there's an Indigenous-led crisis pilot led by two-spirited people of the First Nations in partnership with two other organizations. It's an Indigenous-led crisis support team responding to mental health crises and wellness checks for individuals located in Division 14. So if you call 211, you can automatically be connected, but you can find out more at the number 2spirits.org. For my American listeners of Two-Spirit Identity, you can go to strongheartshelpline.org at 844-7-NATIVE or 844-762-8433. itgetsbettercanada.org has tons of resources for the 2S LGBTQ. Just a warning for the QT BIPOC. I did see some orgs listed in Alberta that not all of them practice anti-racism or have Indigenous education. So while you can try them, if you don't get the response you're looking for, you may want to try the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit hotline. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation faces it. This is self-care, how I take my power back. I started this podcast to speak freely without interruption, tone policing, leadership shaming, colonial narrative, without gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear our opinions, but sure like to tell us theirs when they don't know anything about Indigenous peoples, colonialism, the constant surveillance of our people, protests, vigils, and our rights. I and many others share information on microaggressions daily, so it's just unacceptable anymore. Learn about being trauma-informed. We also deal with a lot of internalized racism and gatekeeping. That's part of being trauma-informed. So it's important that people see this internal and external racism as an everyday reality for me, other Indigenous peoples, folks with disabilities, QT BIPOC, and more. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, to my granny up in heaven, my mom, for what strength looks like through your example. In Edmonton, congratulations on the Oilers win last night. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my mom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots, and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian is through her. I'm a second generation proud Calgarian. Thank you to my husband for not just being the producer and editor of the show, but being my husband, my childhood friend, father of our child, and support down my journey of the Red Road, witnessing decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, we are blessed to learn from you every single day. We are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. And I hope that my child and my family will be proud in the future. of us discussing this. Okay, you have to excuse me. I've been realizing my child's going to be going into grade 12. So, and all the graduation stuff's happening. Getting a little verklempt about it for all the SNL viewers who know who Mike Myers is. I honor the Blackfoot and the elders as the members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce my name in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot and Dene elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. I just got to tell a side note real quick. If you've ever seen Jeremy Dutcher, man, he really hit home the lack of language that some of us experience, and really he's incorporated into music in such a good way. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, or you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And the last thing I want to do is kind of a touch grass moment. And it was kind of funny throughout this entire conversation. One of our guests were talking about their parents meeting online. And I was just laughing because my husband and I remember when the internet first came on and we were so excited. But now that we're really old and we've been married for like 30 years, we wouldn't even know where to start in that world. So of being online and trying to find new relationships is just so funny to us. So anyway, that's my little touch grass moment just in this podcast alone. But I want to end by giving side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish, and you're lucky my dog can't catch you. And my beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. Thanks, folks, for listening.